the question, who am I, is not only one of the most important questions we will ever ask ourselves, it is the deepest question for anyone seeking truth. It is also a question that no one can answer for us. And there is a point where it no longer feels like you're asking the question. It feels like something within you is asking you. This is a question that one needs to know in any and in every situation we encounter. It's a foundational question. The question is not how do we fit in? The real question is who am I in it? When we don't truly know who we are, it becomes easier to try to fit in based on identity. We look for something to hold on to escape the search. We turn to a belief, a role, a philosophy, a religion, a spiritual identity, a story. I believe this question has appeared in front of every single one of us, regardless to where you are on your life journey, your spiritual journey. Because somewhere in us, there is a natural urge to find out who we are. But for me, the question still remains, am I knowing myself, or am I holding on to an idea of myself? Deeper than just grabbing a hold of a story or grabbing to something that you identify with. I mean, what is the purpose in all of it if we don't understand ourselves, right? And it seems to me that the more we attach to a concept, a belief, an idea, a role, some form of identity, the further we drift from truly understanding ourselves on a deeper level. Not because those things are wrong, the roles that we create for ourselves, the roles that we have to be in our daily human experience. I'm not saying these things are wrong, but what they do is they fill in the blank or of the question, who am I? And they can become the center, our lived experience, the role, the various experiences that we have that we identify with so strongly, they become the center, and we carry this idea of who we are in these experiences to the end. When we don't know ourselves, anything can become our center, right? Because remember, there's this natural urge that is there for each and every one of us to find out who we are. And sometimes that gets bombarded by our conditioning, culture, and then those things become our center. Anything can become our idol. Even the things we think is helping us find ourselves, even those things can become an idol. And to answer the question of who am I is not found by searching. The answer was always the place I was searching from. It's a self recognition in what has always been quietly alive within us. Because do we suddenly become nothing without a belief? Do we suddenly become nothing without any form identity, any sort of identity? Do we suddenly become nothing without the title, without the job title? Do we suddenly become nothing when you get divorced? You're no longer married. Do we suddenly become nothing when we no longer have certain things in our possession? Do we become nothing because they gave us a sense of self or a sense of who we are? But when they're no longer there, do we suddenly become nothing? Am I a New Yorker? Or is it just identifying with a lived experience? Who am I without the identity, really? Without the attachment, without the material possession, without any of those things that I was conditioned to believe, without any of those things that I once did to survive who I thought I was. Before the world gave us names, that's the deeper, ponder. Before the world gave us an identity, who were you? I feel like that was a part of me waking up, this inner pull, because when that question arises in you, who am I? It pulls you. And so the more I became aware, I'm waking up because of this question, is the more it felt like a death. All of who I thought I was begins to die. It's a death before the death of the form. The dying is when you're outgrowing. For example, when you start to outgrow something, there's no need for it. The need comes from within. You don't need it anymore. You don't need to attach to it anymore. So there is this, we say we're outgrowing it, but really we're detaching from the need for it. We no longer, in a sense, identify with it. So the closer I am to the recognition of who I am, all of those things starts to fall away. What I thought, what I held on to because it gave me a sense of self, started to fade away because I was being pulled inward. To truly answer the question, I realize I cannot create, I cannot add on another layer. I cannot look to a source outside myself. I have to look within. And it's not that I'm forcing myself to look deeper in. Something is pulling me in. there's a call from within, if I can say it like that. The question pulls you in. And then it begins to unravel. It begins to, you begin to detach from who you thought you were. And that's the whole thing about going from being just this person of the form to being a presence. That is what's left the more you recognize who you truly are. What's left is the being and presence, which can only be felt. When someone asks you who you are or asks me who I am, they look for identification through maybe accomplishments, where you're from. That's really what they're asking. When the question arises in us from within, it points to being. For me, there's no direction towards identity. It's the other direction. It's the unbecoming, the self that was never created. The created self is exhausting. You have to maintain it. But the true self cannot be handed to us by the world. It cannot be defined by our ancestors, generations before us. Although they can share their stories with us, they cannot tell us who you truly are. This question cannot be answered through the eyes of others or through an experience. It's deeper than that. Isn't it our responsibilities to know ourselves? Not the idea of ourselves, not the role, not the personality. All of those states are ever changing. So how can it truly be our natural nature? I feel that when the question arises in us, something deeper wants to be remembered in us. And maybe only love for oneself can make us want to know ourselves that deeply. Because to know love is to know oneself, right? Not the role, not the created personality. So it's your responsibility. I cannot answer the question for you. It's our responsibility. And for many, it may take a lifetime, but maybe that is the journey from becoming someone to being